Hello, everyone. Welcome to our current student panel. I'm going to give us a few minutes for people to arrive. If you're already joining in, go ahead and put into the chat function what country and city you're joining us from, because we'd love to hear where you're at in the world. We will get started in just a few minutes. Like I mentioned, we're going to allow people to kind of join in. I see people are joining in as we go, so feel free to put in the chat where you're joining us from, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. Looks like we have someone from Fort Wayne, Indiana, San Juan, Puerto Rico. So far, some cool places. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're going to get started in just a few moments. We're waiting for people to kind of join in. But while we're waiting, if you want to put where you're joining us from into the chat, we'd love to hear. I see we have someone from Atlanta, Georgia, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, Greenville, North Carolina, Laramie, Wyoming, Salt Lake City, Utah, Oxford, Ohio, Memphis, Tennessee, Concordia, Argentina, Flagstaff, Arizona. We're filtering in all these places around the world. It's pretty cool. Great. So for those of you just joining us, we're going to get started in just a second. If you'd like to put where you're coming from into the chat, that would be great. And I think now I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our current student panel. I'm Bailey Kepford, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at ISEP, and I will be your moderator for this panel discussion. We are so excited to have you all join us today, and we'll be hearing from 5 of our ISEP students who are currently on programs in Europe. And we do have questions prepared for them, but this is really an opportunity for you all to ask questions that you have, whether it be about arriving in your host country, taking classes abroad, the application process, anything like that. So please use the question and answer feature, the Q&A feature, to ask any questions that you have along the way. And now I'm pleased to introduce you to our 5 lovely panelists. We have Alexis Rice from Butler University, who's studying at Université de Lille in France, and she is a double major in math and education. We have Ashley Lim from UPSI in Malaysia, and she's studying in Luleå University of Technology in Sweden, and she is teaching English as a second language major. We have Ben Tuca. He is from Colorado Mesa University and is studying at Universidad de Vigo in Spain, and he is a double major in Hispanic Studies and International Relations. We have Piper Zimmer-Gilman, who's from University of Jamestown and is studying at Universidad Pública de Navarra in Spain and is a double major in Spanish and business. And we have Faith Mekwana from Virginia Wesleyan University, who's studying in University of Tartu in Estonia, who is an international studies major. So thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you and hear about your experiences so far. So to start out, I'd love to hear from our panelists about an anecdote or story highlighting a pivotal moment you've had during your study abroad experience. So let's start with Alexis. Alexis, would you like to kick us off by sharing about a story you've had from your time abroad?
Yeah, so I'm studying in France, and so my main goal is to learn the French language. And something that has been very difficult since getting here, obviously, is my French. It's been very hard to adjust to completely a brand new language in a brand new country. But it actually happened today. I'm in a tandem class, so I meet with a native French speaker for 2 hours every week, and I'm teaching her English, she's teaching me French. And we were having our meeting today, and it was just incredible because I got through a whole hour of speaking French, had a few minor mess ups, but after we finished, she looked at me and she goes, "You just spoke an hour straight of French with like no mess ups to me. We just talked about the most random things." And I'm really proud of you. And I felt so good about myself for once, to just be able to speak the language finally, to someone who speaks it, has spoken it since birth, and feel actually good about it for once. So that was very exciting.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And Piper, would you like to go next?
Yeah, of course. Ooh, just kind of like a story about being here, kind of. Yeah.
One that's
So, yeah, so the other day I needed to get what's called the TIE because I'm studying here for the full year. And so I'm on my way to going, and the bus was super early, and I ended up missing it. But there was like a group of like older ladies who all spoke fairly good English, and they were all really helpful, and like they were allowing me to practice my Spanish, but then also like allowing me to speak in English when I needed to. And we were able to like order a taxi, and I was able to get across town. So that was really great because otherwise I would have been like an half an hour late if they wouldn't have been so willing to help. And so that was just like an overall really great experience.
That's awesome. Ashley, would you like to share a story about your time abroad so far?
Yeah, sure. So as soon as I got a placement email from ISEP confirming that I will be coming to Sweden, I started to learn Swedish on Duolingo app. So I've been learning it for almost half year already by now. But I still can't speak Swedish fluently, but reading wise is fine. But almost all Swedish speak perfect English, so don't worry too much if you're coming to Sweden next semester.
Great. And Ben, would you like to share?
Yeah, so what I'll share, it's not some experience where it's left a lasting impression as to how much my language has improved. It's just fresh in my mind at the moment. In my hardest class in my university, it's phonetics in Spanish, and it's meant for native Spanish speakers. I'm here, such as Alexis learning French. I'm here in Spain learning Spanish, and the classes that I'm taking aren't actually Spanish for foreign speakers. They're Spanish for native speakers. And so typically these classes are pretty rapid paced and hard to understand at times. The other day, my friends joke about this. I just passed out. I fell asleep in class for about 30 minutes, and then I woke up and I was like back at it. Point is, sometimes it's so hard in class that your brain just shuts down. But I will say, over the course of these 8 weeks, I've noticed that in class I can passively kind of take notes and at the same time still hear and listen and understand when those teachers are speaking. Kind of a sign that my Spanish is improving piece by piece. Just because of the difficulty of the class, I have to step up to the challenge as well. So yeah, I'll just share that little piece with you.
Great. And Faith?
Yeah, of course. This is a little bit more of a different route than some of the panelists, but being a minority woman abroad has definitely been eye-opening. I would say that a lot of people are actually really friendly, wanting to know like, why are you in Tartu? What are you doing in Estonia? Where are you from? And so it's been really nice to just like talk to these people without having to worry about how they react to me, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was really nice. And it's very cold here. It's like going to dip into the minuses very soon. So just their warm and friendly personalities have just made this experience a lot better than what I was expecting.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing. That's really interesting to hear a lot of interesting information about your perspectives interacting with locals and learning the language and, finding people really friendly and being able to use those language skills. That's really exciting to hear about. And so thank you for those answers. For my next question, if you could tell us about one of your favorite experiences so far, whether that's travel that you've done, a local cultural event that you've attended, something like that. And you can just I won't choose who goes first. If someone wants to start us off, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
I can go first. So I have dreamed of going to Paris since I was probably like 9 years old, and I'm in Lille, so I'm about an hour and a half train ride away. And it's honestly, I love being in Europe just because the train system is incredible compared to the United States. You can get around so easily, it's so cheap. But I went to Paris for a weekend, and I remember just walking, and I didn't really have a purpose of where I was going. But all of a sudden I saw the Eiffel Tower, and it's just this like symbol of France, and just it kind of hit me that I was abroad and that I was in a different country, a different culture. And at that point, I had been here 3 weeks, I think. And it really hit me that, wow, like I'm doing this, I am being an adult. I am living a dream that, little Alexis would be so proud of. And it almost brought tears to my eyes to finally just be living that moment of seeing the Eiffel Tower for the first time and just being in a country I dearly love and, have continued to learn to love. So yeah, if you come to France, definitely, obviously go to Paris eventually. It's amazing. So.
I suppose I
So
can continue with that. Oh,
yeah,
You can go.
you go. Oh, okay, I'll go. Yeah, I'll share a story about a little travel that we did as well. I will say, and I think I'll touch on this a little bit later in later questions, but the student outreach here in Vigo has been fantastic. It's a little bit smaller out here, and it's a little bit more isolated. It's in the far northwest corner of Spain, and so I'm kind of far from the bigger cities of Spain, kind of the tourist locations. Point is that instead there's a pretty big international community here. And what I found is very easy to make friends. And 2 weeks ago, we were able to organize a trip down to Portugal. We were able to get 50 of us all together and spread out throughout the city in different Airbnbs. Yeah, it was a pretty good time because it was like we were able to take a little piece of Vigo, the people, and then transfer it to a new place, a new country, for that matter, that's worlds away from Spain in ways, and kind of experience travel and experience a new culture and experience just life altogether, living with other people from around the world all at the same time. And that was kind of hard to put words on exactly how nice that experience was to have and how fun it was as well. I can't find better adjectives to describe it, but I'll put that out there.
Yes, I agree with Tuka because I've done several trips so far and I just came back from Norway yesterday. And to be honest, you can save so much if you plan your trips ahead and make full use of the information online. And it was my first time hiking in the snow, and I must say it's not that fun because icy trails are so slippery, you keep on falling down. And also I think trips like these make us closer because me and my other exchange students, friends, we were already close before this, but going on trips together make us even bond stronger. And we play board games every night. We share secrets at night. We watch movies together, and it just feels so much different from just staying in our campus. And yeah, so it's fun to have trips here because you don't have things to worry about. You can just plan trips on weekends and road trips as well.
So mine is similar or based off travel as well. So Christopher Columbus Day was a couple weeks ago now, and so we had Tuesday off. And so my friends and I wanted to plan a trip, and I'm actually only like an hour south of the French border. And so a group of my friends and I were like, let's go, let's do a long weekend. We'll come back on Tuesday because there's no class. And I was super nervous about skipping classes on Monday because Monday is like my big like class, like I have a heavy class load. And the professors here are all super like encouraging of like internet of like traveling while you're here. And so like I just like was explaining like, hey, like what are we going to be doing in class on Monday? Like I won't be here. I'm going to France. And they all were like, never like feel like you have to explain yourself for like traveling, like go and see as much of like the country and the other countries in Europe while you're here, because like they think that it's so great that there's international students, especially one of my professors keeps mentioning like in the class that I have with him that last year there was only 10 international students, and this year in that class specifically, there's 25 of us, and we make up half of the class.
Yeah, and just kind of like sum things up for those of y'all that don't know where Estonia is, it's totally okay. But it borders Russia. So there is lots of Russian influence. And just recently, me and one of like my closest friends here, we traveled to Tallinn, which is the capital. It's only about a 2-hour bus ride. And we got to go see the summer residential palace of when Estonia was part of Russia. So it was really like surreal for me, at least, because like in the States, like obviously we don't really have like imperial palaces that you can go visit on the weekend or anything like that. And it was turned into an art museum, and it was just like, I don't know, it just felt like stepping back in history, and it was just like a surreal moment. Like, wow, I'm halfway across the world and like doing things. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm so happy to hear that you're all getting the chance to travel and experience new things, even if you don't like them as much, like walking in the snow. Ashley, that was a funny thing to hear. So thanks for your responses to that question. My third question is, what are you looking most forward to for the remainder of the semester and your time abroad?
I can go first on this one. I'm also studying Spanish while I'm here, and my university offers courses in English as well as in Spanish. And this semester, when I first got here, I sat in on a couple of like Spanish classes, and I just felt very overwhelmed. I felt very behind, and so I did probably the stupid thing, and I switched all of my like major specific classes to English. And so I'm really excited for like next semester to really like push myself, and I plan on joining like some Spanish speaking courses in addition to like my Spanish classes for exchange students, and just to like keep pushing myself, because I am a Spanish major. Like I want to be fluent, and so I'm looking forward to just being able to really push myself even more than like I am now.
I'd say that for me, I'm also looking ahead into the spring semester. I'm here for a year as well. As I touched on, I haven't left Vigo so much, the university or the city, just because it's pretty far out of the way, and I don't really have a lot of reason to. Part of the experience I've had this semester and what I've kind of come to terms with is that I will be here getting to know a lot of people all at the same time. And then a lot of the international students that are here with Erasmus, which is the European body that groups all students together, which allows all European students to do study abroad. There's a lot of most of these Erasmus students are leaving here after a semester, and so what I'm excited for next semester are the opportunities to go visit them in their home countries. I'm excited to go to Germany, to Italy, to France, to Sweden, to see all of the friends that I've become very close with, because that more intimate experience with a local and a friend at that next semester is gonna be really exciting for me, and I get the chance to leave Vigo a little bit more and more of a reason to. And so I think next semester will be very different for me. So we'll see how that turns out.
So as for me, I'm currently in northern Sweden, and I plan to visit southern Sweden next month after my exam. So because the trips that I've done so far were all group trips, and I wish to do one solo trip on my own. And I did some short reels on Instagram so far, but I haven't done a proper vlog yet. So that's my goal for next month.
I'm only here for the semester, but I think I chose a really nice semester to come because the Christmas markets are very famous here in Estonia. And so Tartu has their own that's made for the locals. And then Tallinn, the capital, also has one. And their old town is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So they have like a huge Christmas market with like fairy lights and ice skating. And I'm just so excited to go with my group of friends and get in the holiday spirit.
I'm also only here for a semester, which I'm really sad that I actually leave in like 2 months. But like Ben mentioned, the Erasmus program is incredible, especially here in Lille, because it is one of the largest cities, and we have like 4 universities here. So the Erasmus actually sets up trips that are really cheap for students, and international students, like ISEP students, can actually attend as well. And so we actually have vacation next week, so very excited to have a week off school. And I have basically 4 trips lined up with Erasmus for the next 4 weekends. And I'm very excited just to get to go travel with some of my international friends that I've made here, and actually see lots of parts of France as well as Amsterdam eventually. So I'm just really excited to get to know my friends a lot better, and to travel with some people, because I've only been doing solo trips so far. So I'm excited to go with some people for once.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like an exciting rest of the semester / academic year that you all have planned. So that's really great. And thank you for sharing that. So I wanted to mention at this point that the panelists would love to answer any questions that you all have. So please put them in the Q&A, and we would be happy to ask them to our panelists as we go along. So just type those into the Q&A and we'll get to them as we are able to. But for this section of the panel, I wanted to, I asked each of the panelists to choose specific questions that they would like to answer from a list of questions. And actually 4 out of the 5 panelists chose how have you met friends while abroad, and what has been your experience meeting locals. So I'm going to start with asking that question to Faith to answer. So Faith, if you want to start out with answering that one.
Yeah, so there's something called Freshers Week that's kind of different from the States. Because like we really only have like freshman orientation, and that's only like 2 days. But here it's like a whole week of events, and everybody gets together, and there's like mixers, and you can go and meet new people. And so some of the people that I met at the beginning of the semester, like we've been friends for now, and like we go everywhere to like ballets and art museums, cafes, all sorts of things. So it's really nice meeting international students like that. In terms for the locals, they're a little bit more reserved here, so it's kind of hard getting in touch with them. But I am involved in this Estonian culture program, and they actually like pair us up with other Estonians that like want to meet foreigners and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I am in that aspect, and it's been going like really fun so far. Like they may come off as cold, but once you get to know them, they're so funny and so like welcoming, and it just really makes you feel like at home.
Great. And we're actually getting a lot of questions in the chat now. So I'm going to pause from the questions that you all selected and go to some from the chat. So the first one is, how has COVID impacted your experiences? So anyone can unmute and talk about that.
I would like to share about this because I believe that Swedish government has done a very good job in controlling this pandemic. And actually, the Swedish government has lifted all the restrictions last month, and the life here is just like the life before COVID. We don't have to wear masks anymore, but I must say everyone is still practicing precautions, like we always wash and sanitize our hands when entering a new place or building. And that's from my point in Sweden, because in Sweden you can actually like live without COVID already, but I'm not sure about the other places. So anyone wants to answer on that question?
Yeah, I know this is not just a France thing, but other European countries have it, but we have the pass sanitaire is what we call it. It's a pass you have to get, either prove that you're within 180 days from being tested positive for COVID, or that you've been vaccinated. Getting it for French exchange students was really easy. It took me 1 week from me getting here for me to actually receive it. Up until then, I was just showing my COVID vaccination card when I went places, because you do have to have it when you go into restaurants, bars, really anywhere you would stay for a longer amount of time. And then we have to wear masks everywhere we go, basically. But like Ashley said, it's basically normal life. You just have to have that sanitary pass, and you can pretty much do everything, which is really nice. I will say the one thing, going to London is kind of hard. Very different if you're not from the UK. So just pay attention to that. I don't know if they'll still have that, but right now it's a little difficult.
I'll speak a little bit about Spain. It's nothing, I can't speak for all of Spain. I'm not sure how it is up in Navarra where Piper is, but here I will say the day-to-day, you don't really feel the effect of it so much. You are required to wear a mask in all buildings and all public transport. Outside, it's optional, but there's still some people walking around with masks. And I think from what I've heard, that's kind of the aftermath of the beginnings of COVID. I'm not sure if you'll remember, but like when the pandemic first seemed to kick off, Italy and Spain were hit very hard. And I think they're still feeling the effects of that, or they feel a little bit of the fear of that still here. I didn't have many orientation things at my university, but that's only a one-time thing, because I do feel that over time in this location specifically, or maybe in all of Spain, that the pandemic has kind of been alleviating a little bit. For example, like clubs and bars are starting to open up until like 5 or 6 in the morning, which was a COVID restriction. And then, as Alexis also touched on, it is very unique coming from England and Great Britain because of the requirements they have out there. My sister visited the other day from Edinburgh, and she had a hell of a time getting down here. We'll say that. She spent, I think, around 300 euros to come to visit for a couple of days because of the COVID test and all that. But other than that, there hasn't been too much of an impact because of COVID, I will say, I feel.
I just want to add on that Ben was completely right with his region is the exact same as mine. So, yeah.
All right, so another question that we're getting is just how your arrival was, whether you got picked up at the airport, getting used to the metro, specifically like coordinating with ISEP once you arrived on campus. We have someone, Sophie, who's going to Lille next semester. So Alexis, maybe you could start us off with talking about your experience arriving on campus.
Yeah, it was a little difficult at first because I was very nervous to speak French, and the lady who actually runs my building where I'm living only speaks French, no English. I was very lucky enough to have a family friend from France who picked me up from the airport, trained with me to Lille, but then left me that night. So I was very nervous, going into day 2 of me actually being here, figuring out the metro system. But the people at the university have been very helpful. Like I might talk about later, like the French system of university is very different from at least the American system. Very hard to get used to at first if you don't know anything about it. So definitely research it. Try and get to know as much as you can so that you're prepared. But my coordinator here at the university has been very helpful, answer all my questions. The metro system, if you just pay attention to the signs, you'll figure it out. The very first day I used it by myself, I started going the wrong way, and then I had to get off and then get on the other side to go the opposite way I was supposed to be going. And then I learned very quickly that Google Maps will tell you which way you need to go if you just search it. So, and they also have great deals for students and young people for the Metro Pass, which is really useful. So hope I answered your question.
Anyone else want to talk about your arrival experience?
Yeah, I can kind of touch on that. Erasmus sets up a sort of buddy program. I'm not sure if any of you have also felt this, had this as well, but with Erasmus, you are set up technically with a buddy who's meant to assimilate you into the city life and help you handle the things like on the ground. And so I signed up for that early, and included in that was they were able to pick you up from the airport. So that was a little bit simple. It was pretty simple in that regard. As far as the metro went, my university is actually an hour away from the city center by bus. So every morning I have to take a bus an hour up the mountain all the way to university. And so I had to figure out the bus system pretty fast. I will say the first couple of days, or the day I actually had to go out for the first time and visit the university, I remember just walking down the street, just waiting, asking, trying to build up the confidence to talk to somebody, ask them in Spanish, hey, how do you use this bus system? Finally, I was able to figure it out. There are actually university cards that are public transport cards that you were allowed to get as students. Those took forever to arrive. It was a hassle. They arrived at the university. I had a lot of problems with mine. But at the end of the day, I did finally receive it. And the public transportation, once you actually figure out how to use it, which differs from, say, a city, it's a very valuable tool to have. And it's very cheap as well. I think it costs about 50 to 60 cents for me to use it. And that's for however long you want to stay on the bus. So.
Yeah, and just to touch on public transportation. So my arrival was a little bit rough, and that could be a story for another time because I don't want to scare y'all. Just know that I got to Tartu safe and sound, obviously. But in terms of public transportation, one of the really nice things I like about Estonia, like Europe in general, is that a lot of these cities are made for walking rather than having a car. So everything is like walkable distance. And then for like taking the bus and stuff, it's very simple. There's discounts for youth, like anybody under the age of 26, you can get discounted tickets. The bus passes are also very easy to use. It's a little nerve-wracking. I'm not gonna lie about, going on the bus for the first time, but usually you'll find somebody that speaks English there, and they'll just help you. And I think it's fairly simple to figure the system out once you get into the habit of doing it and obviously asking for help.
Yeah, when I first got there, I saw a sign for like a bus, and I was like, I can pay the like whatever euros to take a bus to where I need to go. And there was no bus stop anywhere in sight. And so I walked back to like the front of like the airport, and I arrived on a Sunday. Sundays in Spain, nothing is open. So there was like nobody at the airport. It's also a very small airport. And so I asked like the one lady who was sitting there, and I was like, hey, like, how do you get a taxi? And so she was able to like or call a taxi for me, and like they dropped me off right in front of my building. And so like getting here wasn't bad. And then like 2 days later, I met with a group of people who had just gotten here. But one of the people who joined us, he had been here for about a week already. And so he was able to help us get the little cards, and then showed us like how to like re-put money on them when we run out. And so it's just kind of my advice is to just start networking with people like as soon as you get here. Like my first night, I like hung out with a girl, and so it's just everybody is in the same boat when they first get here, and so everybody's willing to help everyone out.
Great. And our next question is, how did you all start your visa process and when?
Yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead, Ben. It's fine.
Okay. No, I went first last time. You go. Go ahead.
So I started my visa process, I guess, the beginning of the summer. So about like 3 months before I had to leave. It wasn't hard, like at all. It was just like you filled out this online paperwork for the Embassy of Estonia, and you ask all these questions, and then you went in person to the Consulate General office. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so it was easy for me to go to New York City and do that in person. I know they have one in DC as well. It just depends where you're from, what's the closest office. And word of advice, make sure all your travel dates, accommodation dates, health insurance, everything matches how long you will be in your country. For example, I came about a week early. So even though my housing contract started August 26th, I arrived August 20th. And since I didn't submit anything saying like, this is where I'll be staying, from the 20th to the 26th, there was a lot of back and forth on their end and my end on like, hey, like your dates aren't matching, can you please provide us, so on and so forth. So yeah, just double check, cross your T's, dot your I's, that sort of stuff. but it was fairly simple, and yeah, like I was able to figure it out. So
I started my Ben, do you want to go first?
You got it.
Okay, so as for me, I started my visa application around like 3 months before I came here as well. And everything could be done online also. And I only had to collect the residence permit card when I reached Sweden. And everything was smooth except for, they only asked me to submit another financial proof that I have enough fund in my bank to ensure that I have like enough money to stay here for 4 months. So it was quite easy to me, and I didn't have to like go any embassy to collect anything, and I only had to collect it when I reached Sweden. So it was quite easy to me.
So my story, I don't want this to scare anybody that's also going to Spain, but it was a little bit more challenging for me in particular, for a variety of reasons. How Spain works is anywhere on the West Coast, the only consulate that issues the visa is in Los Angeles. And so for me, because I live in Colorado, I had to come to Los Angeles to pick up my visa. Before COVID, I would have had to go to Los Angeles twice, once to drop it off and then once to pick it up. And so that is a huge factor for anyone that's on the West Coast. I don't know how it is so much east of Colorado. I know there's a lot more places that there's a lot more embassies. I believe there's one in Chicago. I believe there's one in New York. I believe there's one down south as well. But for me, I had to go all the way to Los Angeles twice to get the visa issued and to pick it up. On top of that, I had to send in a lot of information. I was actually in South America over the course of the summer. And so I recommend to anybody to kind of sum it all up, understand what the requirements are for your visa and what the deadlines are. Just know that to a T as much as you can. Yeah, so that's advice based on my experience, because it wasn't the easiest to obtain my visa, I will say.
And I'll quickly do a plug before we go on that there is a visa workshop that ISEP is hosting tomorrow. We can put the details into the chat so that for those of you going to Spain, you can go specifically to the Spain visa workshop, because as Ben said, it's a little bit more complicated and France is also complicated than some of the other areas in Europe. So we can put the details for that into the chat as well.
Kind of want to piggyback off of what Ben said. So like, yes, originally I would have had to go to, my consulate was Chicago twice. Personally, that is a 6-hour drive one way in the middle of the week, which is not fantastic when I was working 5 days a week, 9 to 5. But because of COVID, they actually had switched it right at the beginning of June, that if you mailed your like application in between these two set dates, it was like, I think mid-June until the end of July. If you mailed it in then, you only had to go in once to pick it up. But then again, like each consulate was different throughout the US. No one consulate wanted the same information and would allow I think we were the only consulate who allowed that. And then like if you missed that deadline, then you had to go in twice. And so it was a little difficult at first, just because it was like every time I logged on to their website just to look, it felt like their requirements of how to get it were changing. And so that was a little frustrating, but yeah, we figured it out. And like once I got everything submitted, everything was fine and it worked out great.
Real quick, yeah, just to talk on the French visa. My issue was that my school was not telling me till the end of June whether or not I was actually allowed to go study abroad, which was very difficult for me, but that hopefully was only this semester type of situation. So I had this weird time of I had to do it between the beginning of July and mid-July. And if I did not submit it by then, there was no guarantee that I would actually get my visa by the time I was supposed to leave. Because it can take up to 12 weeks for my visa to be sent to me. So I ended up going like first or second week of July. I had to drive to Chicago, and at the time I was working 5.5 hours away. So like Piper, it was kind of a mess for me. I had to do the 5.5 hours there and 5.5 hours back in one day to my job, which was a little hard. But the process of actually just submitting the visa, as long as you have all your paperwork, bring backups of everything, it is so simple. And when they say take a copy of a blank page of your visa or your passport, actually do it. I thought they were joking. Like I was like, they're gonna see that I have an empty page. It's fine. No, they actually needed it, so they'll charge you a little bit extra. But they actually ship the visa to you. You have to pay for that, obviously, but you don't actually have to go back and pick it up, which is really nice. So I just had to go in. It was like a 30-minute meeting, in and out, very quick, very easy. And then I got my visa actually within, I think, 4 to 6 weeks of me going to the meeting. So very quicker than I expected, which was nice.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And another question that I've seen is, have you all participated in any excursions while you've been abroad? And those might be on pause because of COVID. So I don't know if you've participated in a planned excursion, if anyone has, but if not, we can move on to the next question.
We found a little bit more of a definition of excursion, like a day trip or just something like in like the city we're in.
So like something that's planned where you go with like other international students or students to like either on a weekend trip, or you do a tour of your city, or you go on a even bigger trip, like, out of the country even.
Okay, so like some of the other panelists have said, like Erasmus is a big thing in Europe. And so we do a lot of activities with them. And we're like right in like the mountain area of Spain, kind of in between the mountains and like the desert. And so we actually do like once a month, we do a trekking. And so we've way too much walking for a single person in one day, but I think they're really fun. You get to go up into the mountains, and those are probably my favorite excursions or like little trip things we've done so far, just because it gets me outside and exploring like the nature side of the city, which something that I've noticed in traveling to other cities in Spain is our city isn't very like nature friendly. There's not a lot of trees. Like in town, we have a couple little parks, and like we have the Ciudadela, which is like our one big park, but that's about it. And so being able to like go into the mountains a little bit is just really fun. But then it's just one day on the weekend, so you have your other day to still be able to get schoolwork done and just kind of hang out at like a coffee shop with some friends. So it's not like overwhelming like a 5-day trip.
Like Pepper had said, the Erasmus, as we've all talked about, is they plan a lot of events. Maybe not excursions, but events for students. And that, for me, has also included a couple excursions, I suppose. There's some islands out west, out in the Atlantic Ocean, and we did an entire day trip with all of the other Erasmus students, which was a lot of fun. About 180 of us, all in one boat that they shipped out to the islands for an entire day. So that was pretty cool. Again, as I touched on, I'm kind of isolated out here. Isolated being I'm not as close to other cities in Spain. But they did do this last Sunday a trip up to Santiago de Compostela, which is a famous city along the El Camino de Santiago, the Way of St. James, which some of you may know about, as well as there have been a couple hikes up in the mountains around the city and city tours, these kinds of things. I've missed a handful of them, which I'm not happy about necessarily for a variety of reasons. But I do encourage anybody to get as involved with ISEP or with Erasmus as you can, because they plan a lot of things out here, and a lot of the events include a lot of the Erasmus students. You'll meet a lot of people and get to see a lot of very things you wouldn't see or things you wouldn't think to see without them being planned. So.
And just to piggyback on Piper and Ben, again with Erasmus, again, super, super popular, but a helpful tip that I found to get involved in these events and stuff is Facebook is very popular here. I've never had Facebook until I got here. So that was really eye-opening. But yeah, they have all sorts of events, constantly updating things. They've had like board game nights, trivia nights. They're doing a trip to Lapland, Finland for like a week or something. So it's like really, really exciting. But yeah, Facebook is definitely the way to go.
Great, thanks. And we have a lot of questions left to answer. So I think I'm just going to have one person answer each question. So I'll just call on you as we go through.
Bailey, one of the questions we've gotten a few times is about the workload and specifically how it's different from your workload at home.
Maybe Ashley, if you'd like to answer that one.
Okay, so for me, I'm taking 3 courses this semester because the Swedish education system is slightly different from my home country education system. They have 2 learning periods for each semester, and I just finished my first learning period. So my first learning period consisted of 3 subjects, and I had maybe like 15 hours of classes every week. And it's quite manageable, and I still have a lot of time to go on trips with my friends. And for the exam wise, some of the classes we did it online, and some of the classes we did it physically. So there are also restrictions before this, like there were only 16 students allowed to be in one class, so it's quite safe to have classes even if it's like face-to-face classes. And the exams here are very different from what I had in my home university also, because they only grade pass or fail, which is very different from the Asian education system. So I don't think you need to worry about the workload if you come to Sweden, but I'm not sure about other countries.
Great. And another question that we have a couple people asking, it looks like, is how the experience has been living in either if you're in a dorm or in an apartment. And then as a kind of follow-up question to that, what did you bring with you to the dorms, like valuables, and do you typically leave those in the dorms? So maybe Piper, if you'd like to answer this question.
I'm living in like the campus residence hall. So it's very similar to a dorm, but also very different at the same time. Unlike my dorm back in America, there is someone at the front desk 24/7. You also need a key card to get into the building, and there's only the one front entrance, except for obviously like the fire is like exits. So I don't like I have everything hidden in my room. Nothing is like sitting out. I have like there's one thing that like you'll hear over and over is like bring photocopies of your passport and of your visa and like all of that kind of stuff. And so I've got 2 different sets of copies in 2 different parts of my room. But like I know like I have AirPods that I brought with because I use them all the time. Those I just stick in a drawer if I don't take them with me. I know that everybody has different opinions on what you should do with your passport. I personally don't take it out with me when like I'm going into the city, like if I'm shopping or going to the bar or whatever with like that kind of thing. But like I keep it in my backpack in like tucked into like 3 different zippers. So like no one could like reach in and just grab it. Obviously, I'm sure everybody does something different because some people say always have it on you and other people say never carry it with you. But I personally feel okay with leaving it in here because, like I said, there is a security guard 24/7. So, yeah.
Great, and we're getting a lot of questions for Alexis. It seems like a lot of people are going to France next semester. So Alexis, did you have a hard time getting insurance, the insurance that you needed, and how was it opening a bank account in France?
Yeah, so insurance, you have to have insurance for your apartment. That is an absolute, or they will honestly not let you move in. It was fairly cheap. It's like the one I have. It was recommended to me by the university. It's like €7 a month, so fairly cheap. It was really easy to apply for. My hardest thing was I wasn't positive of my address when I was applying for it because I needed to know my address, obviously. So I just changed it when I got here to make sure it was exactly matched what my address was. And health insurance, you can apply for the French health insurance. It's not absolutely needed. There are some perks to it, but that's if you're going to be here for at least a year. And I'm only here for a semester, so I didn't apply for it because I have my ISEP insurance. You do need it if you do need insurance, obviously, when you come. That's just a must-have. But if you go get COVID tested, because you don't have the French health insurance, it is not free, unfortunately. And I did get COVID in my first 2 weeks being here, unfortunately. And so I had to, contact the insurance, and then they will repay me back for the test and everything. That's on insurance. What was the second thing? Sorry.
How was it opening a bank account?
Oh, bank account. I found one online that is really easy to apply for. And then it's free for a month, for every month you're here, basically, to have it open. And it's where they deposit my stipend and everything. I highly recommend actually buying a bank card as well. It's only like €10 to actually apply or to get the physical card, because unfortunately where I go to pay my rent, they don't have like the touch from my phone, because I had it as a in my Apple Wallet, but they don't have the newest technology, so you need to actually have a physical card to pay your rent. So that was a little difficult. So just make sure it's N26 is what it's called, which is, and the university recommends it on this website that they give you once you officially apply and become a student and everything. So, but if you want the name, I can type it in the chat as well.
Great, and we just have a few more minutes, so I'm going to do 2 more questions, one for Ben and one for Faith. So Ben, as you've traveled around Europe, have you been able to do that with your student visa, or has there been anything else that has been required for your travels around Europe?
To find around Europe, I've only been to Portugal, actually, thus far. But under my understanding is through the student visa that I have, I can freely move around Europe. In fact, on my flight to Portugal, they didn't even ask to see my passport or anything official for that matter, just because of the Schengen agreement and how Europeans are allowed to move freely from country to country. We are as well. And if they look, which they did at some point, and my student visa just died. Keep going. What was the second part of that question?
Did you just have it? Was there any special requirements for you to go to Portugal?
I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the flights, the cheap flights, like with Ryanair, for example. They offer, I bought an €8 trip to Malaga, which will come in about a month now, an €8 one way. So that just goes to show how cheap it is. They do require for now that Ryanair does require that you upload a copy of your vaccine certificate or a COVID test, or proof that you've recovered from COVID in the last 180 days or something like that. But they only require you to upload that to the app, and then afterwards, no, there's not really any other COVID-related issues as far as moving between countries, under my understanding. And I have a couple student friends, even though I haven't visited to other places, they have been to other countries in Europe, and same response that I have, that it's free movement.
Great. And my final question is for Faith. How was getting a phone plan in Estonia, and did you get an international plan?
So I personally chose not to do an international phone plan only because one, I'm already way too addicted to my phone and it's just nice to kind of go off the grid for a little while. But I will say that before I do like go off and venture off and stuff like that, I will always pre-look my route, screenshot the directions, et cetera, et cetera. And also there's a lot of public Wi-Fi places in Estonia. Like they have little signs that say Wi-Fi EE and you can just connect to it. So I personally did not do one, but there are lots of cheap options. You can go to like any grocery store and pick up like a SIM card, and you can always just go and like add a few euros here and there for high-speed internet.
Great. Well, I think we didn't get to everyone's questions. Like I said, Alexis had a lot of specific questions addressed her way, but she put her email address into the chat, so feel free to follow up with her. You can also follow up with us if you have specific questions about your program or any questions that you have that weren't answered today. The email address you can get in touch with is info@isep.org. But I want to say a big thank you to our panelists. We really appreciate you being here and answering all these questions. It's going to be so helpful for these students who are either going abroad next semester or they're planning to go abroad in the future, and to just hear about how you're enjoying your experience and being successful and meeting people and learning the language and all of that. Even, despite COVID, you're all having great experiences. That's just so great to hear. And I appreciate you all being honest about your experience, sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, and really helping encourage these students to participate and study abroad. And I want to thank everyone that's attended today's talk. Thank you for joining in. We appreciate your really thoughtful questions and for joining us on this Tuesday. And thank you to Melody, my coworker at ISEP, for moderating the questions. And yeah, so appreciate everybody joining, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.